think the honest answer is that we just don't know yet, because we don't have enough detail in terms of what we're dealing with. So from Advantage perspective, Julia sat on the Global Travel Taskforce. She's also sat on a number of Whitehall round tables. We were able to put a submission in. So I think we've made good steps forward in that we have kept travel on the agenda, and we are now seeing some movement around being able to travel. Ultimately, like we've already said, there are a huge amount of gaps in that. We don't know yet. We know that what the 4 pillars that they will use to judge the criteria on will be, but what we don't know is the data behind that, which makes it difficult to track and advise customers properly. From a member perspective, the testing is still a huge barrier, and we're keeping that lateral flow discussion back on the table. Could it be that lateral flow tests are an option? And we know that the government want to be able to assess the data on positive tests. So could it be that everyone takes the lateral flow test instead of a PCR? And actually, we then, if they're positive, go on to take a PCR test. So I think there's some compromising that we're going to need to do. We know that the government are going to keep public health at the forefront, and I think we're all accepting of that as an industry, but what we've not got yet is the clarity that we need to be able to advise customers properly, and particularly those that want to travel imminently. And one of the things we've talked quite extensively about is a single source of truth. And I think that goes back to making sure that the government are really clear on what data they're using and publishing it for the industry. And that data needs to be aligned with the FCDO data. Otherwise, we are going to have issues like we had last year, where they were giving different pieces of advice. So I think from a member perspective, we are still in limbo. It's making it difficult to advise customers that want to travel imminently. And we do need to get more detail around that pretty quickly, ready for that 17th of May restart. But I think, from where we were 2-3 weeks ago even, we are making positive steps forward. We've just still got quite a long way to go.
Yeah, and turning to you, James, the Abercrombie and Kent and also Coughlan Kings, I mean, they have a very wide portfolio of destinations. I mean, you really do cover every square foot of the earth, just about. Yes. What can you take me inside some of the discussions you've had with perhaps your agent partners and clients as well, really, with respect of how you're actually going to approach the restart, because of this wide portfolio you have. I mean, there's only likely to be a limited number that end up on any kind of green list. What is the approach for you, and what discussions have you been having with your key partners about this?
Well, again, just to concur with Kelly, obviously we've still got a lot of there's not a lot of transparency at the moment in terms of which destination is going to be open. But we've been in this position for a long time now, so we can only start to, we only look at the high level top line government data to start making some aspersions in terms of where we think the demand is going to materialise, where we think actually a destination is going to be open. So you have to try and look beyond where the government's position is, to try and look actually at the data you're seeing from news, from regional governments, from our DMCs as well, globally. We're telling us what's opening in any certain destinations, and then it's then starting to look and match ourselves with our suppliers and our partners to ensure that actually we can meet that capacity and can meet that demand when it materializes. All we can do is really start to prepare ourselves on the ground across our offices, not only in terms of the tour operating offices that we have globally, but also our DMCs. And it's not just about ourselves being prepared, it's for having our suppliers on the ground, our service providers, they need to be resourced at capacity, open for business. It's not as simple as us saying actually we're ready. It's all the way through the supply chain. And one of the key things obviously is ensuring that we've got the correct airlift, and that only will come when the government gives us that transparency, because without the correct airlift, the return to normality, particularly across the summer where we've got a shortened period, is going to be critical. We have to have that to ensure that actually we get the correct airlift and we can get clients, consumers away to where they want and where we can facilitate that demand.
I do think that's one of the big issues actually that we're facing in the sector, that we have a government that doesn't seem to understand that integrated nature of travel. The fact that when there's a decision made, it has huge impacts on an airline flying into a destination. That then has an impact on the ground handlers, DMCs in the country, all the way through to the tourist guides who can't do their work. So, you know, travel is a very interconnected sector. And there doesn't seem to be that understanding in government, and certainly among civil servants who we talk to all the time. And we're not hearing that there is that understanding about the sector. And that's been one of the hallmarks of why travel has really not been top priority or not top of the agenda from government over the last year. Whilst there are certainly those in the Department for Transport who are very supportive and trying to get the sector back to normality as quickly as possible, understandably, to protect the sector. Most of those across government, and don't forget the Global Travel Taskforce is not just Department for Transport members, it's Department of Health, it's Cabinet Office, it's Downing Street. There's just that lack of understanding. And in both Global Travel Taskforce 1 last October and Global Travel Taskforce 2 now, you've still got that lack of understanding. And that's what's holding back meaningful recovery in the sector.